and my hands let go. And in my mind, I'm like, I didn't want to let go yet. Somehow the rope that you would pull tangled in my neck. So the weight of that like snapped my neck. He swims, can't see me. He just sees blood in the water and dives down and pulls me back up. He said, man, if you would have been 12 inches lower, I would not have been able to see you.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another awesome episode of Sail with Fire. I'm your podcast host, Phoenix Ha, the CEO and co-founder of AdBeacon, my favorite first-party data attribution and optimization platform. Very big sentence, but it is my favorite. I am very amped, as per usual. Every single guest is handpicked to be on this podcast for a couple reasons. Number one, they're successful in their own right. And number two, they're also really good people. And I think highlighting the failures just as much as the successes are probably the most important things you can do, hearing their stories. So I am very blessed and honored to welcome Jarrod to the podcast. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for having me on. And it means a lot when you said you handpicked your
I
guests.
do.
So yeah, I'm glad to be here.
I get a lot of people that are like, can I be on the podcast? And I have to have that awkward conversation of like, I need to know you. I need to get to know you. I need to feel you out. I need to make sure like you and I are aligned. And when we had our conversation, we've always been in conversation for some time now. And I've always had great, I would say, exchanges with you. And then the last time we spoke, we went a lot more in depth. I got to know you as a person and human being, very much aligned, very much an advocate of you. But I will say, I don't know how to pronounce your last name. Is it Sousa or Sousa?
Sousa. Yeah.
Sousa.
Yep.
All right. Well, Jarrod Sousa, let me do the formal introduction that we always do here, and then we'll kind of get into the more informal vibe. Okay, guys. So Jarrod Sousa brings a refreshingly different approach to the role of CFO. So with over a decade of experience serving direct-to-consumer brands, he combines financial expertise with a deep understanding of marketing analytics. We love data. Thank you very much. A rare mix that has helped numerous e-commerce companies achieve remarkable growth. Unlike traditional CFOs, Jarrod focuses on transforming complex data into actionable insights that entrepreneurs can actually use. So his approach helps scale brands from 4 million to 43 million in just 4 years. After serving as CFO at Michael Hyatt Company, Jarrod felt called to have a broader impact on the e-commerce community and founded CFO Expertise, now becoming DTC Wealth. So his firm specializes in helping brands generate $3 million to $20 million in revenue, so you can unlock their next phase of growth by connecting the dots between marketing performance and financial health. Rather than just crunching numbers, Jarrod helps founders understand their data in ways that make sense, turning solid gut instincts into data-backed decisions that drive profitable scaling. Now, I won't go too far into that. There's
Now
a
that we
lot.
got rid of the formal, let's get into the informal.
Yeah, let's get into the informal. I mean, I love that because I think it's appropriate to have a little bit of the formal before we get into the informal, because we can just shoot the shit all day long. But
Yes.
Jarrod, let's go back to like what actually matters. So those are great things, fantastic things. And most would open their eyes to so much and be like, wow, it's Jarrod. But I'm going to go, wow, I'm at a barbecue and your wife comes up to me and she pulls me and she goes, Phoenix, I need you to meet my husband. And this is Jarrod. How would she introduce you? Would she introduce you with your career? What would she say that you do? How would she go about that?
Oh, wow. No, she wouldn't introduce me based on the career at all. If anybody asked her, she would just say, I don't know. He does something with finance, right? Like I talk about that to her and she just, doesn't care. Man, I think that she would just introduce me like in an informal way as her soulmate or the love of her life.
That's actually amazing. I love that.
Yeah. So
Cool.
we just celebrated 20 years of marriage this past year. So yeah. Awesome.
If that didn't bring someone's attention back in order, I can't help you, because
Yeah.
like, how rare is it to find a partner that the first thing they say when they introduce you is like, and we don't know, right? She's not here, but we're going to say this is what she would say, but this is the love of my life. This is the person, my person. That's amazing.
It's a funny story. So we met in college, and probably about after 2 weeks of dating, like we both knew we were going to marry each other. But sometimes I can be scared of commitment. So it took us 5 years, but like she needed to graduate college, but we ended up getting married. So we've actually been together for like 25 years.
Isn't it funny? Okay, I was just having this conversation with a friend. This is also not a direct to consumer podcast. We just happen to speak to people who are in direct to consumer. But yeah, I was just speaking to a really close friend of mine about knowing when you know. So like I knew that my husband was going to change my life, whether it be for the better, whether it be for the worse. And I didn't know, but I knew he was going to have massive impact. And a lot of people were, asking me, like, how do you know? When do you know? And I think there's a big difference between knowing and then taking your time. Because some people rush. They go, this is my person. And then they get married like within 2 weeks, which I'm not going to knock you for. But you even said yourself you had commitment issues, even though you knew she was your wife, right? You took the time still.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there was, I mean, obviously, so we dated for 5 years. There's ups and downs in that time period, right? But we worked out a lot of things, and ultimately we're friends. Like our marriage, like we enjoy hanging out with each other. We enjoy just going to get a cup of coffee together, and we enjoy conversing. And it's like when we don't have those times, we can feel it in our marriage, or we're like, hey, we need to get out and like have a date night or just connect. Sometimes it's sitting on the back porch and just connect and ask each other how they're doing. And it's kind of the highlight. Like it ruins everything around you if you're not on the same vibe as your spouse.
100%.
Affects everything.
100%. And I just want to apologize to everybody on the podcast. If you hear my phone going off, not many people know, but there are some massive fires happening right now in my area. And for those of you who do know my story, today marks the 6-year anniversary of the shooting that happened at Borderline Bar and Grill, where 12 people lost their lives. I left 2 hours before that shooting happened. And then 16 hours later, the Woolsey fires came and demolished 1,500 establishments, evacuated 100,000 people. So I think this is a very interesting moment, at least in my life, while I interview you. And we're both very faith-based. So that also makes me feel good about this conversation today. But, it puts a lot of things in perspective. And I know I don't really like to timestamp these episodes because we like to assume that it just happened, even though we do the editing process. But this is also the week after or the days following the election. So there's just a lot of things up in the air, and it's a beautiful reminder that all it comes down to is living and loving the people that you love. And today is really nice because I'm flooded with these messages of, are you okay? Which reminds me of like the love. But anyway, where's my little disclaimer? That's why it's a little bit more meaningful that we have you today. We're like, do we reschedule? No, I want to talk to Jarrod today. I need it for my spirit. So let's do it.
Yeah.
Well, that being said, the fact that your wife obviously is like your biggest, I would say, fan, I can already tell. I would love to just dive in a little bit about your failures. And I think in order for us to talk about successes, I think it's inappropriate to talk about it without the failures that led to them, whether they be personal failures, professional, financial, whatever it may be. They often shape who we are, and those failures become the catalyst to change, which is interchangeably the definition of fire in this aspect. Could you bless us with some experiences that I think shape really who you are today and where you are in terms of like where you want to become or who you want to come out of?
Yeah. Man, so I kind of have to like go back a few steps, right? So, I was raised in a non-Christian home. My parents were fantastic and raised me with proper morals and ethics. They loved us. I have 2 siblings that are older than me. Um, and I was a really good soccer player growing up. And so I played at really high levels. I got a soccer scholarship to go to college. And so I went to this private school, and it was a faith-based school. And so they would have these like sermons that you had to go to once a week. So I was the kid that would I would check in because you had to go to so many, and then I'd climb out the bathroom window and just leave, right? Like I was that guy. And so, but as I went there, and I've had seeds kind of planted in my life before that, but man, God just got a hold of me. And so I got saved while I was there, probably like late sophomore, early junior year. Um, Yet, in those early years, you're like still walking the fence. I'm still like partying with friends. I'm still doing these things, like partaking in the same life, but like going to church on Sunday. And so yeah, so that went on for quite a while. And then I ended up meeting my wife. She comes from like Southern Baptist background. Dad's a music minister, right? Um, and she was just a complete blessing when I met her. But so I'm going to go into the failure in my life, or like the pivotal moment, right? That's what you asked me. All right, sorry. My thoughts got, when I go too far back, it's like, like, okay, wait.
No, you're on the right track.
Yeah.
I was waiting for like, uh-oh, here we come. What happened?
Yeah, yeah. So I was still kind of living that lifestyle, after I met my wife. So anyways, me and some of our friends were gonna go camping, right? So at that point, I was in California. I don't know if people are familiar with like Shaver Lake, Bass Lake, around the Central Valley. And so we were up at Shaver Lake. We knew that there was a rope swing up there that we'd been to many times, right? So you're on this rope swing, and your biggest fear is that you're going to hit a rock or something below the water, but we knew that there was nothing there. So we always thought the worst thing that could happen is you flop, belly flop, back flop, whatever. Um, well, it was early in the morning, probably like 11, but we got up there earlier, and we had already kind of started drinking. We had already started like doing things like we shouldn't have been that early. Um, and so three of us ended up on this rope swing, and we're like, oh man, what are we gonna, like, we just all three went together. So we were like, okay, you let go first, you let go. Well, my buddy let go, and the rope that you pull it back with, like, kind of got caught on his arm, and he thought it broke his arm. And so it kind of like fell off, and then it flew and hit me in the neck, which I didn't know at the time. I'm just looking up at my hands, and my hands let go. And in my mind, I'm like, I didn't want to let go yet. I don't know what happened. And I fall, and I'm just blacked out. I don't know what happened after that. And so somehow the rope that you would pull, the swinging rope back with, got wrapped, like, thankfully not fully around my neck, but it got tangled in my neck. And there was still another guy swinging. So the weight of that like snapped my neck. And so basically, like, I'm flying through the air. My friends are on the shore, and I just smack the water. And one of my buddies jumps in, he swims, can't see me. He just sees blood in the water and dives down and pulls me back up. And so during this whole time, I'm kind of coming in and out of consciousness. They load me on the boat. One of my friends is holding like a towel on my neck, and I'm like, okay, I'm hurt. I know I'm hurt. But am I paralyzed? So I move my hands and fingers, and I'm like, okay, I can feel them. I'm not paralyzed. I'm going to be okay. And then I passed out again. But so they took me to the hospital. I was in the hospital for about 4 days. It broke my jaw in two places, kind of shattered my two front teeth out. I have this huge laceration on my jawline right here, which you can't really see, but basically, like, my whole face was ripped open. Like, they could see my jawline. I had to get 3 layers of stitches there. My throat had swelled, or my neck outside of my head. Like, they thought they were gonna have to give me a tracheotomy. It's like all these bad things happen. But the saving grace of that story is my buddy later, once I kind of healed, and we could talk about that. But he said, man, if you would have been 12 inches lower, I would not have been able to see you. So I'm unconscious, like sinking in the water, and lakes are dirty, but like, it's like, man, 12 inches is the distance, right? And you kind of talked about the shooting. The 2 hours was that time frame of, I'm not here, my children aren't here, so yeah, that was the biggest pivotal moment in my life, that then changed my life trajectory, but then changed my faith as well, to take it way more seriously than I had been previously.
It's such a weird thing. Like, I feel like this episode was meant, at least I'm selfish for me, because I needed, it's such a, we're cut from the same cloth in the sense of what we believe in. And then also to know how big of a moment that is. I'm so grateful you're alive. I'm so grateful you're here, that we can have this conversation, that you can have the love of your life, that you can have the life that you have, right? But it's like, it's such a surreal moment where you go, is this close? I was this close. Like for you, it's 12 inches. We talked about that last time. For me, it was 2 hours.
Yeah.
I know in my life there was a distinct moment. There's so many moments, but there was one in particular I could never get out of my head. It was my best friend Emily, and she called me. She was the one that told me shooting was happening. She called me. I fell asleep. She was screaming and she was crying. I'll never forget it. She's like, "Where are you?" And I'm like, "Oh, sorry." She's like, "Where are you?" And I'm like, "I'm home. What's wrong?" And she's like, "No, turn on the news." And like, I don't cry. So this is a big deal. 12 people lost their lives that night from somebody who had never been to that bar before. You know, they went through the credit card transactions and he had never been there before. He lived down the street. He was a trained military soldier, really specialized in, he specialized in combat, specifically shooting. Like he was, I think he was a sniper. I don't know, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So the level of accuracy for him was ridiculous. He ended up going into the manager's office. I thought this was all false, by the way, until I talked to the owner, who's a very good friend of mine. He went into his office, basically put his manifesto out on Facebook, posted it, and came back out, shot everyone, came back in and shot himself. 2 hours. Okay. For me, 12 inches for you. Do you feel like there was a distinct moment where you just can't get that out of your head? There's just something that it sticks. Maybe it's a motivator. Maybe it's just a memory. That call was mine.
Yeah, I would say going back, my distinct memory was when I fully came back to consciousness on that boat, and just I knew I was hurt, but thankful I wasn't paralyzed. And so like I didn't know the severity of it at that point. I didn't know I was 12 inches away. I didn't know any of that. But like
Yeah.
just being on that boat, and I'm like, okay, I'm really hurt right now. And I'm asking my friend what happened, and he's just saying like, "Don't worry, you're gonna be okay." Like nobody's telling me what happened. And so it was just the fact that like I was like, okay, I'm hurt, but I'm not paralyzed. So if I'm not paralyzed, and even if I was, things would work out, but not in the way that obviously they did. But I just knew that I was going to recover at that point.
It's like a focus mode, right? Like you're not dwelling in it. It's the same thing for me when she told me, like, "Where are you?" I just went into focus mode. And then the next couple of days were a blur because it was an active crime scene, they had to leave the bodies there. And then on the work end, so we rented out this is a very surreal conversation. Interesting, but like, we rented out the kitchen out of Borderline. So we were there every day. And all of our stuff was there in terms of like cooking. We did macronutrient meals. So we were no longer able to obviously access that. So the decaying bodies were there, real people, real humans. And I went into survival mode of like not thinking real humans. I was just thinking decay. We can't use this stuff anymore. We were already on the brink of kind of collapsing for other reasons. In the business, it's gone. So like I'm mourning the business. I'm not ready to mourn lives. That was my catalyst to change, Jarrod. It took a natural disaster, which happened, by the way, 16 hours after the Woolsey fire came and, like I said, destroyed a lot of homes of my clients at the time. It took me those things to then break up with my then fiance, who was my business partner, to go home and move in with my mom, who I hadn't lived with since I was 17, to not speak with anybody for months and just kind of like go quiet.
Yeah.
And then to rebuild. And you go into the survival like focus mode. You don't really think, 12 inches or 2 hours. You just like go. And we're in a very blessed position to be able to look back and reflect and process. Do you think that changed you? That experience really changed you of how you approach everything?
I think for sure. One, like I said, it made me take my faith much more seriously and live through the lens of that on the forefront, because nothing else really matters to me at this point, right? Like
Right.
when I talk about my children, unless I'm pointing them and raising them in that direction, then I've failed as a father. And that's what I
Mhm.
truly believe. And kind of setting the trajectory up for them. I think I've always had that mentality. Like, I don't, somebody told me they say this in Hawaii. I don't know if it's true, but it is what it is. Like the saying, maybe not. Somebody says, but I
My
say it all
house,
the time.
my mom said that all the time. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm
I
on
say it,
it.
I say it all the time. And what I mean by that is like, the situation is what it is. How can we pivot from this? Right. Like, I'm not going to dwell on the past. I'm not going to dwell on, the fact that I did get hurt or, anything in my life. And, it's just like, okay, here's the situation. How are we going to get through this? How are we going to make it better? And that's just how I've always lived. And so I think what's interesting is I never thought about that before, but till this conversation, when that went through my mind of, okay, I'm not paralyzed. I'm going to be okay. Like, I'm going to get through this. Right. And so even my subconscious level was telling you that, during that time. But I think the biggest factor is that my faith and my growth and my reliance on God, and then just gratitude. Like, I'm grateful every day that I'm here, and I don't take that for granted. Like, I could lose everything else as long as I have my faith and my family, then I'm good.
That's exactly how I feel. It's yeah, it's a beautiful thing. We recognized in a few episodes back that the underlying thread between some of the best leaders in the space, or just leaders in general, are the ones that are able to take on tragedy, or even just like uh, things are going to happen. Shit's going to hit the fan in your business. It's going to happen, but the ability to be able to compartmentalize and not to freak out, or even if you do freak out, be able to have a decisive plan of how to move forward. So like for you, you're like, okay, I'm not paralyzed. Let's get through it, and I take that too. So for me, after all those things happened, there were also other things that had happened like very close to that. I think it had to break my spirit to remember that I have a spirit, right? It was like breaking my spirit and then realizing, and, I'll super biblical, but like to realize the Holy Spirit is in control. And like for me, it was really important to understand that I have no control. Like we have no control. We can make and press the right buttons, sure, but those buttons could break. Shopify could go down, which has happened. Meta could go down, which has happened.
Yeah.
iOS 14.5 can destroy your business, and then you can rebuild it. And there's always a solve. And I said this before about my spouse, and it's really beautiful that we introed it about your wife. But for me, before I made the decision to get married to Ryan, I looked at myself in the mirror and said, at the end of the day, if I had no money, he had no money, and we were in like a cardboard box, I can look over and go, I want to hang out with you.
Yes.
And it puts things in perspective of how to handle issues and tragedies, and like those things happen. You don't forget that you broke your neck. You don't forget that the shooting happened, right? But you also, like you said, don't dwell and go, okay, now I have this life that I've been given. What am I going to do with it?
Yeah. Yeah. It's it's interesting. I took my older two, like I said, I grew up in California. I live in Nashville now, but I took my older two to visit my parents this past summer. And I tell them about this accident, but they don't know how like serious it was, right? It's like you're telling a story. But my mom had these old pictures, which I like took photos of. And when they saw the actual injury and like how thick my neck was, how swollen it was, I had lacerations all over my neck, like literal rope burns. And they were just like, oh, okay. Now I get it. Now, like we were almost not here because you almost died that day,
I don't know why this sparked this, but like I they tore down Borderline for the most part. They ended up going somewhere else. The owner of Borderline wanted to keep it and create it as a historical landmark, which I thought was great, but obviously it carries a lot of pain as well. And revisiting those places, I think, is really healing to be able to move forward. I think that's a very big thing. Is often we have these failures that we can't move forward from. They hinder us from growth. And I'm a firm believer in reliving terrible memories and rewriting that history. So like you date somebody, right? So in the first phases of breakup, you have to go back to the movie theaters. You have to go back to Disneyland, whether it be with yourself or the new person, so you can rewrite what that memory is and not let it stop you. And I think that it pertains to business too. I wanted to go back to Borderline. I wanted to do those things. I went back to my family home, which weirdly enough is torn down too. And to be able to go, okay, this isn't going to paralyze me. Not to say that's how you paralyze, but
no fun. But yeah.
yeah, it's
And I think
beautiful.
there's an aspect of that. Like, obviously, you don't have those buildings being torn down. You don't have the opportunity to go back. But when I do go back and relive that or see pictures, then it's not like I'm not going back to experience the pain. I'm going back to then a sense of gratitude that, oh wow, it's almost a wake up call. Like every day is a blessing to me that I'm here. Like, don't waste it, right? And I would say success to people is defined differently. Like for me, it's not monetarily, even though that's what I do is finance for DTC Brands, right? And that's what I'm trying to help them achieve. But to me, it's freedom, it's time with my family. It's, just having loved ones around you, it's the live one. So
Do you remember that Christian saying, not of this world? And it became really lame for a while because it was on every bumper sticker everywhere. But it's actually very true. So, again, not a faith-based podcast, but also not something we shouldn't talk about either, because this is who we are. Actually, I talked to my husband about this when we got married. I'm like, you're not dating or marrying someone who has God in their life. You've marrying and dating someone who is who she is because it's intertwined within her DNA. This is like a whole, you don't know Phoenix unless you know God with her, right? It's a package deal. If anything, it's one person. It's three, in one, but it's four actually. But
yeah, that's an interesting point, which is like a lot of people it gets fuzzy between religion and faith, right? So it's like we could say that we're a religious person. I'm a faith-based person. So I rely totally on Jesus Christ, and we go to different churches. And I think there's obviously a point of that to educate us as believers and to connect and to love on one another and to serve one another. But then we go out into the world and we live our lives through that lens.
absolutely. And the reason why I brought up not of this world is similar to yourself. I'm not driven by monetary gain, which of course what we do. So I believe that money is access. Money is opportunity. So what does that mean? Access to things that you potentially didn't have access to with money, right? Get in a door, get out of a door. Go to a vacation, not go to a vacation. I also think it's opportunity, but what are you going to do with that opportunity? So I would much rather be in a position where I do have that access, that opportunity to be able to help others. We made a very, very important decision when we got married that our house will always be open to anybody who has a need. Broken home, broken family. We want to adopt eventually. Like, this is something we foundationally agreed on, knowing that we may never have privacy in our home, and that's fine. But in order to be able to do that, I need to be able to support that. And he needs to be able to support that. That's where money comes in, access, right? So to your point, it's not wrong to be of faith and have money. It's what you do with it and also what drives you. So you and I are very much aligned, where it was like people, stories, conversations, which is, I think, why it's so appropriate that you're on this podcast, and we're very grateful for it.
I don't know if you knew this about me, but and I don't know how long we have, but this is an amazing story. Do you know, I didn't know that you wanted to adopt. Do you know that we've adopted children?
No, I had no idea. This is amazing. No,
Okay.
no idea.
So then there's another story that I have about wealth.
Let's go.
Let me tell you our adoption story. So my wife and I have two biological children. Our oldest two, I just say they're Lily and Jet, right? And through some time, we felt like we wanted to have more children, just not of our own, because we could provide for more children. So we lived in Oklahoma City at the time. We felt led. We were going down the international the international journey. And then,
to Jersey, but international.
We adopted Snooki. Here we go. So anyways, there was corruption in this country that we were looking at. And then, so we pulled it to domestic, right? And so we turned in our paperwork on a Thursday. And they're like, okay, typically, it'll take about a year. And in Oklahoma, the laws, like the birth mom chooses the family. So you make this book and all that. So we got a call on Sunday. So 4 days later, and they leave a voice message. And so I'm like, okay, so my wife and I call back, we're on speaker, they don't answer. I'm like, okay, it's not that important if they didn't answer the phone. But then they called us back and they're like, hey, you've got chosen, and it's twins, and they were born on Thursday. They were born the day we turned in our paperwork, and they were in the NICU. And so we rushed down to the hospital. And so like literally I can hold them in like my arm, like they're kind of preemie, but not like completely preemie, right? I think they're both like just about 4 pounds. And so yeah, so that was kind of like our adoption story. So we doubled our kid count in a matter of like these days. We only had 1 car seat, right? We weren't anticipating all of that. But interestingly enough, so the birth mom has a full-blooded child that's a year older than them. And then with twins, she just couldn't care for all of them. She didn't have support, right? She didn't want to go on welfare. So we're raising our twins. About 10 months later, we get a call from the agency saying that she's pregnant again with a full-blooded sibling. So my wife and I are like, okay, it's a full-blooded sibling. Like, you should adopt this child too. And so so we had a car seat. We go down to the hospital, and they go to have the sonogram, and it's twins again. So
What? She had double twins?
yeah. And so my wife, like, she's just like, Jarrod, there's no way. Like, we can't, like, we didn't really have like direct family around us there. She's like, I have no help. I can't raise 4 kids that are under the age of 1. Like, there's just no way. And so I'm like, well, we just kind of kept going down the process. But so they were born, and we were the first ones to hold them. We went into the waiting room and we prayed, like really hard before we went in. And so we held both of the babies, and we came out and we're like, man, these aren't our children. Like, and so basically we went and told the birth mom, and then she asked my wife to help her pick out the adoptive family, which then, we did. And we have an amazing relationship with them. So it's like the siblings still know each other. But I would say that was one of the hardest decisions that like we've had to make in our lives, like holding these children and then saying like, they're not ours. But we trusted God, and we both came out with the same feeling, the same understanding. And it's like, we just leaned into that, to try and force it. But, and then it's just amazing to see how God intertwined our families with this other adoptive family. And we still have a great relationship with them. And so it's just amazing how God orchestrated all of that.
That's incredible. I'm like, not even kidding. Like, that's incredible. Yeah, the strength to be able
But it's nothing that we did. This is just all what,
I didn't
God
say
has
you're
done.
incredible. I said that.
Yeah.
First of all, let's not get it twisted, Jerry. No, your wife and yourself and your family are incredible for taking in 3 children. Well, 2 and then 2. For some reason I was like, wait, but there was one more. Just kidding. But there was another one with the one.
He was older. So yeah.
Yeah, which is incredible. Like, so I wanted 2 biological children and adopt 1. That was something that actually we connected on immediately. I was like, we're dating, right? Harmless. And at that point in time, I had nothing to lose. So I was just like, diary of the mouth. I was like, yeah, I want 2 biological children, 1 adopted. I'm just giving everything I can for him to run away. He's like, that's crazy. Like, that's literally what I want. And I'm like, wow. And I don't know what we would have done if we had twins. We would definitely take the twins, I think, because twins are, it's a lot, but
Yeah.
something, right? But to have another set of twins and for you to want that desire to want to provide for those children, and then to be able to say, sorry, no, a second time from first the birth mother, then to you and your wife, but then to be able to pass that blessing on to another family that is going to truly love deeply onto this children. It was meant to be. It was divine. So like,
Yeah.
huge.
And I think,
awesome.
Even like I said, that was honestly the toughest decisions we've made, be married to each other. And so there was pain around that. Like you almost felt like you failed these children to a certain extent. But then when when you finally make it through that valley, get to the other side, you realize, oh no, I was just a little cog in this wheel of life that God was
Oh, yeah.
teaching me. And, and this was actually a blessing for everybody else involved, and even for us to actually be a part of the story and just witness it and still have a connection with that family.
Incredible. And they probably need that too. They need that line of connection with both you and your wife, and you probably need it the other way around. I'm actually going to, use another example too, to make everybody on the podcast listening going, Phoenix, shut up. It's not the same thing. You're so delulu. So I know you probably are too, a believer that what is for you is for you. What is not for you is not for you. And I believe that doors are opened and closed for a purpose. Perfect example is it took a natural disaster, a shooting, and all these things for it to shut down a door where I thought I was going to marry one person. And I ended up, meeting my husband 3 days after I made the decision to end that relationship, right? So now bringing it to the thing that people are going to yell at me for is our new dog. So this dog, and this applies to business, guys. I very much believe this is. You might think a business is for you. You might think an opportunity is for you. You might think an interview that you got, you're going to get. And then when you don't get it, you're angry. You throw things at the wall. But what is for you is for you, and what is not. Because, Ryan really wanted a dog. When he moved down here, he had his dog Coda, and that was the love of his life at the time. And she passed away suddenly. We went to the vet. She wasn't feeling super well. She went back there, had a seizure, and passed away immediately. It was devastating. And I remember just watching Ryan just crumble. And it's been years since then. And I have my dog, who is not the nicest dog in the world. He's a Chihuahua and bites Ryan all the time. And Ryan's like, I need a dog for me. And, we just got married, all these things. I'm like, there's not the right timing. And the Ventura County shelter came out and said, we have puppies. And it was one of my friends sent it over to him and said, hey, these puppies are here. You might want one, behind my back, naturally. So he sees this puppy and immediately zones in on this puppy and is like, there were 8 of them. And there was one. And he's like, that puppy has my heart. I saw the puppy on the phone and I was like, as much as I wanted it not to be for us, I knew. Just like you wanted those twins to be yours, but you knew. And I was like, we're screwed. That's our puppy. But here's the thing. That it's a lottery system of whether or not you can even see the puppies or go find them, see them. So I waited in the lottery, or I was getting ready to get into the lottery line, and the puppies got taken off the website. They're gone. And I called and I also got in the lottery line. I got number 3, and then they bumped me out of the line completely. So I was like, what is going on? And they call me. They're like, yeah, those puppies, the original owners wants to take them back.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, oh. And I looked at Ryan and I had to break the news to him. He was just crushed. And I told him, I was like, what is for you is for you, and what is not for you is not for you. That doesn't mean to give up. It just means hold on. So we kept just sitting there. I was praying over it. So my husband's he is a believer, but he's not, right? And I think I lead the faith in this relationship as of right now, but we were praying over it. And the next week, out of nowhere, the puppies come back up on the website. Mind you, the Ventura County shelter told me the likelihood of that happening was like 90% to 10%. 10% yes, 90% no. And it was because they were either going to donate those puppies to another company that would sell them, or they would just, whatever. Long story short, Ryan got that puppy.
Wow.
And she's our puppy. She drives me nuts. But we waited, and it took time. And, I just think that what is for you, and what is not. And those twins are more blessed, I think, with that family. And you are blessed with the family that's taking over them. And we're blessed with Nesta. And if we didn't have her, we'd be blessed too. So.
And sometimes we can get caught up in the timing of it, right? And think that it's not for us. And you're like, no, it just needs a little bit more time.
100%. 100%.
Yeah.
That pertains to so many. I'm sure you have a million stories. I have a million stories. I also think stories were equipped for people who are willing to tell them to in life. Like, anyway, I'm just very, very grateful for you to be on here and to talk about it. And I'm going to transition us though, something, but there's more. No, I do appreciate you sharing that. Thank you. That was really beautiful. But that being said, what is a hot
I will
take?
say this though. So if you guys do go down that path, me and my wife had hearts for that. So if there's any questions or anything that we could do or help out, like because it is a journey, for sure, but it's a huge plus.
Say less. You think I haven't already just in my mind gone, I'm going to call Jarrod when we're ready to adopt 100. And also we believe in adopting domestic. So this is something that we believe that the children in our area or in the United States need love. And we are equipped for that love. Like Ryan knew he was called and has always been equipped to take care of someone with special needs. So he always felt on his heart, if we had a baby that had special needs, he's ready for it. What a conversation. Who has that conversation, right? When we're ready, I will definitely call you. And anybody on this call or on this podcast listening, call Jarrod if this
Yeah.
1-800.
For sure though. For sure. We are 100% willing and able to talk about that in our story and whatever we can do to help, for sure.
Yeah. That's beautiful. Okay. Well, now back to DSC. You ready? What is your...
Yeah, I don't know if I'm ready for this.
I'm not ready for this. This is the heartfelt moment. I'm like, hey, bringing it back.
Yeah.
What do you think your biggest hot take is right now in the space, in life? I mean, we're coming off an election.
Yeah. What, give me like a definite, like what hot take,
I've used this example before. You could say something along the lines of, I hate pudding, right? And you got to back it all the way down to a D2C man who thinks he's a 10 is actually a real life 4, cost cap versus bid cap, or CFOs really need to work with CMOs. What would you?
Man, that's a loaded question for sure. Gives me too many opportunities or too many things to think about. But I guess, trying to wrap this up and bring it back into business, we'll bring it back in the D2C space. So, because we can talk about the other stuff.
We don't have. That's you.
Yeah. But yeah, one of the biggest things, what I see in brands is like truly knowing your numbers. So my hot take is, and this isn't like a plug for us because I know other fractional CFOs that do this, but you can have your attribution data, you can have your marketing data, but unless you can link that to your actual financial data and trust that financial data, because your financials are the actual report card of your business. Like I can literally tell you if you're going to make it or not by a quick glance at your financials. I can tell you what you're doing good, what you're not doing good, right? I could just glance at them. And so when we do not connect all of those pieces, then you're not truly understanding your business. You're not truly understanding the levers that you could pull, the things that you should shut off, the direction you shouldn't be going, right? And so, I just see so many people that neglect that financial aspect or investing in that, and then it always comes back to bite.
Amen. Also, to your point, we've realized at AdBeacon that the P&L that we pull, right, from Shopify often is incorrect not because we're incorrect. It's because whoever set it up in terms of COGS, whatever it is in the Shopify store is often incorrect or not updated or whatever it may be. Some people want to go COGS per product and don't go super in depth. So we've realized very quickly that we might need to do customized metrics for the P&L. Yeah. And that's where like a Jarrod would come in and go, these are the actual numbers. I also think the hot take is when you shield your media buyers and your teams from your numbers, you are doing your business a disservice.
Yeah.
There's like this old school thought process that if you give out the secret sauce, which is not secret, then you're open to vulnerability and, people can take advantage of you. But if you close people off to what the goal is and you keep moving the barometer of what the goal is without backing it with validity of numbers, people are going to get tired of that. So media buyers, easy example. I just got off a call with a client who is an agency who's speaking with one of their clients. They're getting like a 7 return in AdBeacon, right? Click only attribution. And they're like, okay, we're willing to spend more as long as you double the ROAS.
What? Yeah.
Right. Now, if you can give me the data that supports why you have that stance, let's go. So anyone with common sense is like, what are you smoking? And can you share that? Because this makes no sense. So again, back down to the P&L standpoint is, number one, it has to be accurate. Jarrod is absolutely correct. And then you have an expert that's able to go through it. But number two, like, come on, be realistic and open it up. So
and that's where we like those financials, because they're fully reconciled, right? So like they're categorized in every single transaction that's coming through. And so that's your source of truth. So like even when we're looking at ad spend, we're calculating customer acquisition costs then we're looking at contribution margin. If you don't know your contribution margin to customer lifetime value, like then you don't know where to put those targets, right? That company could go down to a 3 multiple and still be like scaling to the moon profitably, but without knowing those numbers. But like saying we want to double ad spend and increase that double, like that's just.
I hear the wildest things. You'd be surprised. But if for those who don't know, what's the calculation for contribution margin?
So we take the customer lifetime value, we subtract out cost of goods, shipping, and merchant fees. So all 3 of those are variable expenditures that go along with every single sale in a D2C brand, right? Unless you're in wholesale and all of that. You actually pull out ad spend too, but I don't say that here because we actually have a chart that will show your CAC, which is calculating ad spend, and then where your contribution margin breaks that. So okay, we've invested, we're going to break even in month 3, month 4, just depending on how aggressive you want to get. And so that's kind of how we show that chart to our clients.
And that's how you do it profitably, friends. That's how yes. No, I love that because a lot of people say contribution margin and aren't really articulating what that is. And everyone's definition of contribution margin, weirdly enough, is a little skewed. It's also like CAC versus CPA. It is different and like minutely different, but it is.
Well, so even when you're talking to people and they talk about cost of goods, sometimes they'll put in shipping and merchant fees, and you're like, no, that's not a cost of the good sold. Like, right. And the reason why we break that out too on our side is because I want to understand your efficiency in your actual cost of goods sold and your gross margin compared to your selling expenditures, right? It's so.
You're talking about landed, right? And then you're talking about, so we're having this like subset of, I would say, expenses for cost of goods. And then you're adding on all these other things that become variables depending. And that's not realistic. You have to separate the two to understand what's wrong or what's right and where to pull and push from. And we're aligned. We are 100% aligned.
And if you're not hitting those margins, then you need to go back to the supplier. Like it'll give you that indication like, oh, we need to go negotiate with our manufacturer.
Right. And then you can call Jarrod to be the negotiator. Just kidding.
That's it. Yeah.
Is that your job? But yeah, okay, Jarrod, where can people find you? This has been so much fun. And where can people talk to you, dive in, ask about adoption, ask about contribution margin?
Man, I am like a complete open book. So I'm just candid. I'll talk with anybody. LinkedIn, pretty much. Like if you just, type in my name, Jarrod Sousa, or if you go to DTC Wealth, which is just, you could actually do the number 2 in the middle if you want, because I still own that domain and it points at dtcwealth.com. Even though I don't think that's the right way to do it, but I had both. So
okay. There's also Twitter.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter, but I'm not heavily on there.
He's like, don't talk to me on Twitter.
Yeah. You might not get a reply for a few weeks, but
you won't get one either. I'll see it, but I won't reply to it.
But I'm more on LinkedIn like each day. I mean, I'm on Facebook and Instagram, but mostly like LinkedIn is where I converse with people. Yeah. Or shoot me an email. And you're right. If it's business, if it's personal, if it's adoption, reach out.
Please do. To have Jarrod in your corner, blessing. I can attest to that. I promote that. I approve this message. But that being said, it's truly an honor to have you here, and I'm grateful for this conversation, and I hope that everyone got as much out of it as I did today. So if you're on a treadmill, if you're in the car, if you're literally just sitting here and avoiding work, we're here for you. Follow along, subscribe. Don't worry about anything else today, but just remembering that people love you and you have to love into others. But yeah, until next time. Bye.